Today we're going to look at the most ancient known city in North America and whether it relates to the Book of Mormon. It's called Poverty Point. It's located in northeast Louisiana and it fits Book of Mormon timeframes. It's a fascinating site and I think it relates to the Book of Mormon. I'd like to show it to you. So come with me and we'll do a virtual tour together. Let me share my screen. So I've pulled up some slides, and this is what Poverty Point, Louisiana looks like. So on the right, you'll see where it is. It's a little bit west of the lower Mississippi River. So there's Mississippi over here, northeast Louisiana, there's southeast Arkansas, and Poverty Point is about 15 miles west of the current flow of the Mississippi River. Now, anciently, the lower Mississippi River was much wider. It was before the levees and things were built in the 1800s and so forth. And it's right at the edge where the floodplain ends, and there's a ridge. So, and this is sort of imagined with the Mississippi River sort of wider and creating in effect, a shallow lake there. And then you have a 15 to 20 foot ridge, and then the site. And it's a very large site. Let's go ahead and take a look at what it looks like now. This is the largest mound on the site. It's called Mound A, 72 feet tall. It's over 700 feet wide, over 600 feet in length. And anciently, this was thought to be sort of like a elevated rectangle, sorry, with a ramp. Obviously, this is a boardwalk that's been made recently for tourists, and then this was more like a rectangle shape, probably up to here. And then you have this sort of hill profile, which is not really understood why they made it that way. We'll talk about that a little bit in the presentation. So some call it a T shape or a potentially bird-shaped like mound with wings there. Let's go back to the drawing of how one conception of how it may have looked anciently, this being that mound. So again, 72 feet tall with a sort of an elevated rectangular platform and these sort of side hills or wings. There are also additional mounds on the site. And then these are all elevated ridges. And there are 6 semicircle shaped ridges. Now, each of these ridges is big. They're about 20 foot wide each. So they're estimated to have been about 5 feet tall, 20 feet wide, and then about 50 feet in between the ridges. And there was housing on the ridges and also locations for activities. Okay. So let's take a couple of things about the site. Carbon dating shows that produced dates indicating that it was first settled and built between 1700 BC to 1100 BC. Now, in terms of the Book of Mormon, that would put it in a Jaredite time frame. I'm going to present later a little bit some thinking about whether that carbon date may be wrong, and it may actually be a Hopewell Lamanite type site. I'll present that at my reasons for thinking that at the end. But either way, the timing would fit the Book of Mormon. If the carbon dating is correct, then it would fit in the Jaredite time frame. It's a large 400-acre site. As indicated, they place it on a ridge that rises about 15 to 20 feet above the Mississippi River, lower Mississippi River floodplain. Obviously to probably protect it from the flooding, so it's up at a nice safe zone, free from the flooding, but also can be adjacent to accessing fishing and boating in the Mississippi River. And it's obvious from the artifacts that they did a fair amount of fishing there. So again, it's thought that the Mississippi River was much wider then, and it filled up that 15-mile floodplain and made sort of a shallow lake, which would have been great for fishing and swimming and so forth. There are the dimensions of the C-shaped ridges, as I said, very large, 20 feet wide, 50 feet apart. There are houses that are placed on the ridge, perhaps placed on the ridge to elevate it from the ground from the rest of the ground for water or who knows what. But nevertheless, that's what they did. The center circle is 37 acres. So again, it's an extremely large site. And the scientists found that this had been filled in and leveled. So there was a significant amount of, so this inner circle is 37 acres and had been filled in and leveled to make a really nice central gathering area or park or whatever within their city. Okay, and then indicated the tallest mound is 72 feet tall. That makes it, the size of it makes it the second biggest mound built by mound builders in North America. The most famous one being at Cahokia, Monk's Mound. Cahokia is near the St. Louis area. It was built, based off of the information we have, it was built after Book of Mormon timeframes. And this one here at Poverty Point is the second largest mound. Okay, so a couple of more things about Poverty Point. On the left, I used some pictures from signs that you can find at the site. The site does have it has a pretty nice museum. It has some nice signs. The land is so large and it's been tilled over, so you can't see outside of the largest mounds. So again, the largest mounds, untouched by plowing. But as you see, the trees have sort of built in around it, have grown in around it. So what happens is that when you're at the site, these have all been plowed and mowed over so much, the ridges, that you can't hardly even see them. And the forest has kind of encroached. Now, where the forest has encroached for, more than 100 years or so, you can still see the remnants of the C-shaped ridges better. So if you kind of go into, this is all forest along here. So if you go into that forest, you can kind of see, you can start to visualize the size of them more. But when you're on the site itself, it's hard to visualize. Okay, so back to the mound. As I said, it was extremely large, and millions of basket loads of dirt to build the mound. Here they estimated 15 million loads, 15 million loads of 50 pounds each that they would have carried and to build the mound. And just going back to the picture, so it's clear that they took some of the dirt from the part right off the edge of the ridge. So whether maybe it was a time when the water wasn't all the way up, or maybe on the border or wherever it was, but they took that and carried it to the mound. And you can tell that because you still have some of the Mississippi River marine life and stuff and the organisms in the soil that was carried up when they look at that soil. And one of the things that they can tell, there was a study that despite how many loads it would have taken, the millions of loads, there was in one study they found a lack of erosion between soil layers, which may have indicated that it was done all within one season or within a few months. So if you are talking about moving millions of cubic feet of soil within a few months, that would imply thousands of workers and a significantly large population doing that. It was a massive effort. But generally it's thought that it would have taken over time, but this one study creates that doubt that maybe it was a very massive effort that would have required thousands of workers. The site is big enough to hold hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the habitations on the site. The size of it, just to go back again, super large. This is 37 acres just there. It's 3/8 of a mile from one side to the other, and I think it was 3/4 of a mile, they said, from the edge to the edge. So very, very large site. Okay, and this has the bit about the Mississippi River and creating a lake there at the Mason Ridge that it's built on. Okay, so in doing archaeological studies on the site, one of the interesting things that they found was that there are distinct areas and zones in the site that were used for different activities. And so this represents the different ridges and what they found here. And I know that the picture is not the best. I took it from the museum that was there. But for example, this top grouping was women's culinary, and that was all the artifacts related to women's culinary work was over in this group and over in this group. So it was confined to two separate parts of the city. And likewise with domestic tools, those artifacts are all found in this location. And then you have more men's hunting and fowling type stuff and fewer artifacts. So what they can tell is that it had distinct zones for activities, and which is a sort of an interesting thing to learn about those people. In the next couple of slides, we're going to look at some of the artifacts that are found there and what they look like. One of the characteristic and unique artifacts that's found at Poverty Point are what are called clay cooking balls. And these are all made of clay. And they know that they were used for cooking. So what they would do is start a fire, they would put these in, and these little clay things would get hot. And then when the fire could be put out or the clay balls removed and then used to more evenly cook something else. Maybe perhaps, I don't know, maybe it avoids the smoke as well, but at least you get a more and more even cooking. So there was a cooking device that was used, and they could tell that they find these in the fires where where cooking was done. So they know that they were used as cooking balls in their way of cooking. Many of them have designs on them. Some of them look like they could be dice. So like you see square ones with symbols. And so that's my projection, is not what the museum says, but I think some of them with the designs on them potentially could have been used for dice or other purposes as well. There are lots and lots of arrowheads. There's other little pieces of artwork. Some of the artwork is actually quite well done, polished and beautiful. Some of it is more primitive looking. There's a huge number of artifacts, so you can tell that it was a large society there for a number of years. In the center, it talks about the number of artifacts that are found, and it's like for the projectile points, like the arrowheads, 11,000 of them, beads, over 1,000 of them, what they call plummets, over 2,000 of them, so forth, hammerstones, copper objects, all kinds of figurines, pipes, all kinds of things. On the top right, different metallic devices, lots of with copper, lots of tools made with bone and stone, perforators, blades, all kinds of different tools and things that were made. Now on the top left at the museum, they call these plummets that would have been used with nets for fishing, and they would basically be used as weights on the net. There are holes on the end of them, and so they're with drilled holes that could then be used as weights for nets for fishing. I think there's a possibility that they were not just for nets for fishing, but could also have been used as weights for ancient looms and textiles. They, at the museum, they don't say that or think that, but this was not my original idea. I saw a commenter from another place that pointed out that possibility, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Looms, ancient looms, were used in the Old World. They're not known to have been used anciently in the Americas. But if you go and take a look at, here, I'll click over to, if you do a search for, related to ancient loom weights, you'll see that it's a lot of very similar type things. It could be any kind of design, but with the drilled holes and the weights used for it. They're used in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, a number of different ancient societies. You click to, this is just a Wikipedia about these ancient looms. And what you would do is the looms would be used to hold the yarn tight to use for that. So anyway, I think that was a possibility there with those plummets that may in fact be ancient looms for textiles. Okay, now going on to a couple of other things. At this point, that's about what we know of the site. And if the carbon dating is right, if it's an ancient Jaredite site, that's about the end of what we know right there. But there are a few reasons that I have to question whether the dating is correct, and I'll talk about those three reasons. I think that it's actually a later Hopewell site that fits the Lamanite time frame, and that will play out, and you'll see my reasoning for that. But just understand that this is my speculation as opposed to what you would find on a Google search or whatever. But the first reason that I have is that there are a number of similar large sites, and the other similar large sites that are potential ancient cities in North America all date to the Hopewell time frame, all date between 200 BC to 400 AD. So in other words, this is a similar large site, similar ancient city in a lot of ways, but is an outlier that doesn't fit the dating that was obtained for all of the other locations. Now, in different videos, I'll have talked a little bit about how carbon dating can be thrown off in certain ways when there's water contamination. And one of the ways that water contamination can throw off carbon dates is if you're using material or soil that's been in very low carbon old water, like glacial melt runoff. Now, the Mississippi River anciently did have glacial melt runoff after as the ice age ended. There's questions about whether, how long that lasted and so forth. But the soil that was taken to build the mounds, I believe, was taken from that Mississippi River floodplain, which would have had that water contamination, which would have potentially given it an older date. Again, that's speculation on my part. Let me tell you the reasons, though, why I think it fits. Okay, so first was that there are other large similar sites. The dating for those all fit a different time frame, 200 BC to 400 AD, and that includes in Louisiana and other areas. And the Marksville, Louisiana site even has the similar C-shaped ridge features around the plaza, and it dates to a different time frame, 200 BC to 400 AD. The Poverty Point one is an outlier for the dating. The second reason is that not only are there some similar sites, but there are some precise feature matches that indicate a common culture and communication, which would require the same overlapping time. So for example, if you look at the Poverty Point and a site called the Pinson Mound site, Pinson Mound site is another site that I think relates to the Book of Mormon, and I'll address it in a future video. But both sites are the same overall size. They're both 400 acres. In addition, both sites have a central large mound. The central large mound happens to be the exact same height of 72 feet. So that to me, looks beyond coincidence. It's clearly designed by a common culture. 400 acres for the total site, a 72-foot tall central mound. So again, that points to a common culture and time frame. It also, both sites have elevated rectangular platform mounds and other conical mounds. And let's just take a quick look over at that Pinson site. Like I said, I'll address it in the future, but here's a sign from the Pinson Mound site, which is in Tennessee. There they date that particular mound to 1 AD to 300 AD. And that, like I said, the height 72 feet tall there. That's at the Pinson Mounds in Tennessee. So that's the second reason, and perhaps the most convincing of them. But the third reason is also important to me, which is that there are signs of a trading network between the Hopewell sites and the Poverty Point site. And that means that they had to overlap. So the current thinking for Poverty Point is that that culture had ended before the Hopewell sites elsewhere in the US. But there are artifacts that from the one site at the other that show that there was communication, which means that they had to have been at the same time. For example, both sites contained copper that was sourced from the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. Both sites contained other items that were sourced from locations in the Southeast US. And then, for example, here at the Pinson Mound sites in Tennessee, you can see, not just the stuff from, that they had sourced from other locations, which can also be found, some of these at Poverty Point. But the key one is that the Pinson Mound site has some of the unique clay cooking balls that which are otherwise unique to the Poverty Point site. So this indicates that the two sites where we know the Pinson Mound was 200 BC to 400 AD, that whole site, and we know the other Hopewell sites are that same time frame. The Poverty Point carbon dating makes it an outlier, makes it look older, but when you look at the cultural and other aspects and the communication and then the trading, it has to have been at the same time. So that's why, even though the carbon dating pulled the old dates, and I would be fine with the old dates because it it is what it is, but it fits the Jaredite, so that would be fine. It is what it is, but I think that it fits the Lamanite time frame. Now, I'm going to do two other things showing that if it does relate to the Lamanite time frame, a couple of other things that we can learn from the site. The first relates to those plummets, which I said might be loom weights. If they are loom weights, that would perhaps indicate the making of Hopewell style fabrics. Now, many don't understand that the Hopewell did have fabric. So when you're at the museum, like the Hopewell Cultural National Park location in Chillicothe, they will show pictures of the Hopewell in just like loincloths or whatever. But in the digs in the Ohio area, they found evidence of fabric. Now, the fabric decomposes and wears away, so usually you don't see anything, but there have been a couple of spots where some of the fabric was able to be preserved. And this is a drawing of the design that was found on one of the Hopewell pieces of fabric, so you can kind of see the type of design that would have been used on the fabric. And then there was one site in the Hopewell Mound group in Chillicothe where they were actually able to recover some of the fabric and could tell that it was a robe. And it was a robe that, and the individual was wearing different teeth and other jewelry things. You see kind of a breastplate kind of thing that was used probably to indicate some sort of a status or something. And then at the bottom of the robe, designs, and I don't know how to interpret that design, but there was a design there So that's an example of a Hopewell fabric site. Another interesting thing is that if the poverty point does relate to the Lamanite Nephite time frame, which is the just BC, a few hundred BC to a few hundred AD, there are some interesting parallels in how it is constructed to the experience that would have been that people at ancient Jerusalem would have had. So again, this is my speculation and theory, and it requires knowing a little bit about ancient Jerusalem. So here, ancient Jerusalem was on a hill. And these are contour maps, so this indicates the valley, and then the hill, the valleys on the hill on each side, and the Temple Mount, and the Mount of Olives over here, and then the valley, and then the wall that would go around the city. Now, when people would come to Jerusalem anciently for worship or for the holidays, they would come to Jerusalem and they would enter at the lower part of the city, and they would first wash in the pool of Siloam, and then they would proceed up through the city of David. So you wash in the pool of Siloam, up through the city of David, then up to the temple, ascend up to the temple. Okay, now there's questions on where exactly the temple was located on the mount, but here is one picture of it, and you see a sort of this rectangular Temple of Solomon, and with a kind of the hill profile in the back. Now, what's interesting is that, like I said, in the parallel with Poverty Point, you almost have that kind of a Jerusalem type setup, where if people were coming to it, they would come. You would have the water, which would be considered a fresh living water source because it's connected to the flowing Mississippi River. So it's a fresh, clean water source. And then you could come up, go through the city, up, and ascend to what I think was their temple site up on that platform. And then so the question of why did they build this profile on the back? Was it just a T, or was it a bird shape? I think that it may have been to mimic the profile of the mount back in Jerusalem, if these were Lamanites or Nephites, and that it could create a Jerusalem type experience for them to ascend up to the temple, have the temple site with a profile in the back. And I think that's why they may have spent the time to build that artificial mound or hill there. Anyway, that's just my theory. I think it's a fascinating site, and I encourage you to visit it if you have a chance. And I'll go. Oh, just a couple other things. There are sites about Poverty Point. So if you Google Poverty Point, it's a World Heritage site, and it has some nice pictures and things. It does have some things on the people and the mounds. It has a few of the pictures of the artifacts. I found that this site was not as good as the Fort Ancient materials that were put together for the other one. And actually, I found that Wikipedia and other sources had better and more detailed information than unfortunately what's found for the Poverty Point website. But I'll go ahead and stop the share there. Okay, so that's Poverty Point. Maybe Jaredite, may relate to the Book of Mormon, maybe Lamanite, but I think it fits and supports the idea. It supports the historicity of the Book of Mormon. There are many people that question and say, "Oh, there weren't cities in North America anciently that relate to Book of Mormon timeframes," and this is one of the examples that disproves that. It clearly was a city that relates to Book of Mormon times. Okay, so let me know if you have any comments or questions below, and let me know if you think it's Jaredite or Lamanite, or what you think about it, or neither. And please hit like and subscribe and the notification bell so others can receive this information and we can get some more videos out. All right, thank you.